Welcome to the next episode of the Austin Bar Association's Council of Firsts. I'm your host, Amanda Arriaga, First Latina Bar President. This podcast is made possible by the Texas Bar Foundation. In today's episode, we talk to Justice Raul Gonzalez, first Hispanic Justice of the Supreme Court of Texas and first Hispanic person to ever hold a statewide office in Texas. Justice Gonzalez was born and raised in Weslaco, Texas, and is a graduate of the University of Texas, University of Houston Law Center, and received an LLM from the University of Virginia. Justice Gonzalez served as a member of the judiciary for over 20 years, as a district judge in Brownsville, Court of Appeals judge in Corpus, and then with the Texas Supreme Court from October 1984 to December 1998. Justice Gonzalez was named as Outstanding Alumnus of the University of Houston Law Center, received the Rosewood Gavel Award for Outstanding Jurist at St. Mary's Law School, the Lifetime Achievement Award from the St. Thomas More Society, is a former regent of the University of Houston, and has the distinction of serving as a namesake of the Justice Raul A. Gonzalez Elementary School in Weslaco, Texas. I'm honored to have with me today Justice Gonzalez. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Amanda. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I know folks have known a lot about you for many years, and in reading all of your biography, you talked about how you always wanted to be someone that went to college. But how did you know that you also wanted to be a lawyer?
Well, it was a process of elimination. You know, in high school, I was very active trying to discern, what it is that I want to do with my life as a career. I was active in the one act play. I was active in very active in speech and speech contests, extemporaneous speaking. I was in a debate group, and those type of activities sort of pushed me into law. I was at that point in my life too. I was a social justice warrior. I saw a lot of injustice in our school. The Valley is very unique. Every town has its own history. Weslaco, Texas, when I was growing up, is not at all like your experience in McAllen. The town was divided by tracks, railroad tracks. On one side of the tracks was the Hispanics and the bars and the pool halls and the tattoo parlor shops. On the other side was Anglo. We were prohibited from speaking Spanish in high school, in school. And it appeared that there was some prejudice against Hispanics. So I became one of the group that said, guys, we outnumber the Anglos because the Anglos were getting all the positions, for the yearbook, the most popular, the most talented, the most this, the most that, the queen of this and king of that. And the Hispanics were, by and large, were not getting those positions. So I and a group of others organized. And the next go around, we practiced, we were prejudiced in reverse. So we won all the quote status positions, but simply because of our own prejudice. You don't find now, 50 years later, 60 years later, we come to find out that prejudice can be fought by love, acceptance, respect, not by more prejudice. Prejudice only perpetuates itself when you practice what you abhor. So I've learned a few things since then.
I love that. Fight prejudice with love. And so you became a lawyer, you were fighting the prejudice, and then you decided at some point you wanted to oversee the law instead of being a lawyer. So how did you decide to be a judge?
Well, again, it was, I had been a lawyer for many, many years. I've had a wonderful over 50-year career as law. You know, my first job as a lawyer was with a personal injury law firm. And I knew nothing about the economics of the law practice. I thought that they offered me a very good deal. I saying, look, you'll get 50% of every personal injury case that you bring in, plus you have a $560 dollars a month draw. Well, that didn't last very long because I didn't know that personal injury cases, you get paid at the tail end, and it may take over a year or two before you get any money. You can't pay your rent or your car payment or your food when your wife is making more money as a secretary or as an executive assistant than me as a lawyer. So I had the opportunity to go from the law firm to go work as an assistant city attorney for the city of Houston for a salary, at double or triple my salary. And if you ever have worked in municipal court, you know, there you'll find that there's a pecking order even among the municipal court prosecutors. I started out prosecuting vagrants, those individuals who were charged with soliciting money for sex, prostitutes. And then you graduate ultimately to trying negligent collision cases, which was invaluable because you learn how to prepare your case and how to put on evidence, and how to make arguments. So I did that for a couple of years, and that was invaluable experience. Not only did I find that rewarding, and then being involved in the bar association, you make connections and you network. A member of the Harris County Bar was the U.S. Attorney. And the U.S. Attorney, Anthony J.P. Farris from El Paso, whose father was Anglo and his mother was Mexican-American. And he had a heart for the Mexican-American bar, to promote and to invite, to encourage, to educate lawyers of Mexican-American descent. He, through his influence as a U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Texas, I became an assistant United States attorney. And that was a big step up in my legal career. Started on the civil side, doing condemnation cases. After I did that for about 6 months or so, there had been a United States attorney in Brownsville, Texas, that he was dissatisfied with. He wanted to make a change. So he offered me the position, and I said, I'm having the time of my life here. You know, let me talk to my wife about it. Well, I had been out of the valley, you know, since undergraduate here at UT, since law school. My parents were living and alive on both sides of the family. We started growing. We started having children, and I thought that it'd be great if the kids would get to know their grandparents. So after some consideration, I accepted the position of being an assistant United States attorney in Brownsville, Texas, where my job was to be the only prosecutor in federal court, Judge Reynaldo Garza's court. So I became very active in my work, climbing the ladder of success, trying cases, many cases involving tons of marijuana, an occasional crime in the high seas. The shrimpers would get involved and kill somebody after a drunken binge or something, and try those cases, and try a lot of immigration cases, a lot of drug cases. So I was thriving in my career. I became involved with the Bar Association, and I tried to be involved in different committees and do for young lawyers what had been done for me, give them a hand up. That was very rewarding. After 4 years of that, I decided to go into private practice. And I got an offer for making a lot more money than I was making as a federal prosecutor by being a criminal defense lawyer. I was surprised that the criminal defense, those people that are accused of major crimes, pay very well. Those criminal defendants have resources. They find the money. And I was doing great. After doing that for a while, I decided to go be in private practice on my own. The criminal defendants, they were paying me money that I had to share with the firm. I wanted that to be for me and not share it. So I did that for a while, and it developed into a walk-in practice, civil and criminal. But I became very disillusioned in the practice of law. When you're a greenhorn, you know very little about, like I said, the economics of law practice. And everybody has a dream of having the big case where you're going to hit the lottery and make lots of money. Well, waiting, that didn't come. The reason it didn't come is because the law practice in that era, we had a lot of solicitation, illegal solicitation or unethical solicitation of those cases by having a network of runners that were make the rounds in the hospital, make the rounds in the so-called, for the lack of a better term, ambulance chasers. So I was disillusioned. And about that time, I had a profound religious transformation. The spiritual side of my life had been dormant for a long time. I was married to my career. I thought that being a good husband would be the best. My job as being a best husband was to be the best provider I could for my wife and my children. I was very happy. I was very successful. Success is measured, to me, I was successful. I had a beautiful wife. I had children. We had money in the bank. I had a condo in South Padre Island. I had a luxury car, and I had money in the bank. My spouse was unhappy that I was spending all my time, or most of my time, with my career, my job, my bar associations, my civic involvement. I was on the school board of a school district in the Valley for a time. I was in the Rotary Club. I was in different bar committees. And she would complain that she was disillusioned because we didn't talk as much as we did in the early years. And I was not very I was not very loving in my responses. My response was, babe, look around. Look at your mom and dad. Look at my aunts and uncles. You get married, you get settled, and that's just the way it is. What you're asking of me is unrealistic. It's only in the movies where you have romantic love after you get married after a while and you get busy with career and children. So that was why did I seek a judicial position? When I attended a worldwide marriage encounter weekend, which is to teach husbands and wives, spouses, tools, how they can prioritize their marriage, it had a unintended consequence that the spiritual side of my three-legged stool that had been dormant for years was reawakened, and I got involved. Before then, I was a churchgoer because of culture and tradition, not because of any faith. It was expected of me to go to church, but I was a backbencher, sat on the back, zero involvement in the life of the church or the parish. But as a result of that marriage encounter weekend and the opening of my eyes, that God wanted more for me, that He had a plan for me, and that was just to be a better husband, a better father, a better citizen with more balance. So there was a vacancy for a district judge in Brownsville. And I started to pray for discernment. What is it that I want to do? I'm disillusioned with the practice of law. Perhaps I ought to give this a try. Well, these type of decisions, require a lot of pre-work before you file. You've got to get a committee. You got to talk to friends. How are you going to finance it? Your campaign? Are we going to have the worker bees that will knock on doors and ask people to vote for you? We got a committee together, and I became a district judge. And I loved it. I was a general jurisdiction judge. You had criminal, civil, family, all types of disputes. The variety just intrigued me. And particularly the juvenile matters, juvenile cases and adoptions. That was very, very rewarding to be dealing with parents who seek to adopt a child, or a parent who has a wayward son or daughter that had been charged with a crime. I just loved that work. As I was growing in my faith, I became to see that I could be an agent to bring families together. At least give it a try. Make an effort. Because sometimes parents act with tough love, and they're the ones that call the police about my son or daughter. I remember one case specifically where I don't know what possessed me to do this, but I did. I called a recess during a hearing. And I we had an in-bench conference with the lawyers. I asked the lawyers permission for me to talk to the parents in chambers, along with their wayward child. And they agreed. And I had no idea what I was going to say or what I was going to do. So I had a flare prayer. I said, Lord, what do I do? And I told the parents about my journey as a father and the mistakes that I had made rearing our kids, and that I knew that I had made some mistakes because I was treating them like a defendant in court rather than a child of my own flesh and blood. I was a very tough taskmaster. In my immaturity as a judge, I was a law and order judge. If you do the crime, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime, was my attitude. In that era, little did I know that was not very efficacious or proper. Everybody has a story. Everybody has a reason for doing the wrong thing. Some of it is lack of formation, or lack of respect, or just a mistake that they made where their life goes off the tracks. So I asked the parents, looking at your life with this child, can you think of anything that perhaps you could have done different in shaping the morals, the values of this child? And the mother pops up and says, yes. And she started to cry. And the body language of the child was hands crossed, a little bit surprised, but just baffled by what was happening. I got teary-eyed when I shared my story about the mistakes I had made as a father with our children. That prompted something in the mother, and she was ready and willing to ask for forgiveness of her sibling, of her child. The best the father could do was to reach out and touch the child. I have no idea. Then we proceeded with a hearing. I could have sent the child to JV, juvenile home, but I didn't. And I have no idea whether that particular episode had any lasting effects or not. But I gave it a try. Only God knows if that worked or not. But that tells you the tremendous satisfaction and fulfillment that I was feeling as I was growing. I saw myself as perhaps an agent for peace and reconciliation and building harmony with the family. And you go from there to have a murder case. So the variety. And then you have every Friday, you have, quote, Father's Day, failure to pay child support. And I was very tough. I wanted the people that were not obeying my order to pay child support. I was very tough. I would find him in contempt and put him in jail. And he says, for how long? Well, only time will tell. It was interesting to me how they find money. You put them in jail on Friday night, by Monday, they've either worked out a payment plan or they come up with a bunch of money to make it right. So I was flabbergasted as I was learning about human dynamics, learning how to be a judge. I was getting tremendous job satisfaction. So I thought I was going to do that for the rest of my life.
Was it a difficult decision when you were approached to be part of the Court of Appeals and leave this judgeship that you clearly loved?
I thought they were kidding. Friends of mine said, Governor Bill Clements a Republican is looking to put 3 people in the Court of Appeals. They're expanding the court. And they want to see whether or not you would be open. No, nobody says, you're in if you want it. Said, are you open to the prospect of being considered to be appointed? And that meant that we would have to move from Brownsville to Corpus Christi, that we would have to uproot the kids to a different school district, that we would have to leave the house that we had just remodeled. So it was a difficult decision, but I said, I may enjoy that job as well. So I became open to the prospect of being appointed as the first Hispanic on Corpus Christi Court of Appeals. Mm-hmm. And I got the nod, and I was confirmed by the Senate. And I didn't like it in the beginning because I'm a people person, and I was used to dealing with lawyers and juries and litigants. But in the Court of Appeal, you're isolated. You just consider the cases on their briefs and an oral argument. And not everybody gets an oral argument, and not in all cases. So it took a while for me to get the rhythm and the practice of being an appellate court judge, which is completely different, a completely different dynamic. First of all, you're not a solo agent. You have to collaborate and participate with the panel and get at least one more vote. You can't have it your way. So you learn the art of compromise. If you take this out, I'm with you because I don't agree with this part of the opinion. If you put this in or in different wording, I will, I'll make the second vote or the third vote. So I did that for 3 years, and I loved it. The only thing that I didn't like was you have to run after the appointment at the next election. So rather than running for election as a district judge in 2-county area, Cameron and Willacy County, now I had 22 counties to do a campaign. So you start the process over of trying to garner support from the Bar Association, from lawyers, et cetera. And I thought I was going to retire as an appellate court judge.
And so instead of running for 22 counties, you ultimately get tapped to be part of the Supreme Court of Texas, where you're going to have to run 254 counties. So how did that happen, and were you surprised when that happened as well?
There are as many journeys to the appellate bench, to the Supreme Court or Court of Appeals or district bench as there are people. There is no one size fits all. There's no one journey that my journey had a faith component to it. I said, Lord, I don't know what you want. What are you asking me? I don't like the process. I do not like being in a position where you have to ask for money, big sums of money, from potential litigants that you are going to have to rule on their case. And there is no way to remove the appearance of impropriety. If you have a litigant, you have a choice to disqualify yourself and not rule on their case, or to sit on the case. And the losing party, if you don't disqualify yourself, because you can't disqualify yourself in every case. It takes over $1 million to mount a Supreme Court race. And that money comes from special interests. And there's no way to remove the appearance of impropriety. And I knew that in advance, so I did not want to be open. So my prayer and my quiet time, I said, Lord, I don't know where this is a call from a politician or you're calling me to service in a different arena. So I became open after I made the mistake. Well, not mistake. I told my wife, honey, I don't like it. I'm going to say no. I did not. And then she talked to my mother. My mother is very involved in her faith, in the charismatic renewal and prayer groups and everything else. They were praying for me to be open for the position. Nobody offered me the position. They said, are you open to the prospect of being considered? This time by Governor Mark White, a Democrat. Growing up in the Valley, growing up before your time, Amanda, there was one party, the Democratic Party. Everybody was a Democrat. So there's no way to remove politics out of this equation. I come to find out politics is in every endeavor that we get into, whether it's a school board, a city council, district judge, court of appeals judge, Supreme Court judge. There's no way to remove the politics that are involved. I thought I was safe because there were once the way the political system works. Once they the governor's office floats a trial balloon. They are looking for qualified Hispanics to put on Supreme Court. There's no dearth of candidates. They come out of the woodworks. They appoint me. Well, I became one of many who said, I am open to the prospect. And that was a very interesting dynamics. Governor Mark White, who I did not know. I had never met. And before then, I didn't know Governor Bill Clemens. We had never met. We had never had a discussion. But the beauty of the system, the way it is, other people have an ear to the governor. And they're the ones that make recommendations. And I was appointed to the Texas Supreme Court because I was in the right place at the right time with the criteria they were looking at. Everything lined up for me. So that's how I became a Texas Supreme Court judge. And I served 14 years on the court. I left on my own terms. Went to work with a law firm after that, doing in their appellate section. Loved it. And then my wife and I decided, after my time with a law firm, we haven't been many places out of Texas. Number one, because we were busy working. And number two, because we couldn't afford it. But now we can afford it. So we became travelers, world travelers. We went to China. We went to Tibet. We went to England. We went to France. We went to Ireland. We went to Scotland. We went to the Holy Land. So we went on cruises. We went through the Panama Canal. We went to Machu Picchu, in Peru. So we were on top of the world. And I told our kids, we're spending your inheritance. And we're having a great time.
That's good. They should work for it.
That was my attitude.
So you mentioned that Governor White was looking for qualified Hispanics. Yeah. Do you think that was really intentional? They were looking to have the first Hispanic Supreme Court justice?
Yes. Yes. But the Hispanic community was divided. Up to that point, I had not been involved in Democratic politics. I got so much out of the marriage encounter and the church on the spiritual side. I was spending most of my time either in bar association, but not partisan political politics. And there were others, qualified individuals, who said they had paid their part, they had paid their dues to the Democratic Party, this honor. They were more deserving than I was. And they probably had a very good argument if that was the criteria. But I am told that Governor Mark White told a significant group of Mexican-American group that had been involved in Democratic politics that his choice was going to be me, on the condition that they did not oppose me at the first election. And he said, if you don't make that commitment, I can make history. I can appoint a black. There's never been a black, an African-American on the court. I can appoint a woman. The only woman that had been on the court up to that point was a case many years earlier where all the judges of the court were members of the Woodmen of the World, and they had a Woodmen of the World case. So the governor, they all recused themselves, and the governor appointed a panel of 3 to rule on that case. So she said, I'm told that the governor told him I can make a historic appointment by appointing a woman or an African American. If you decide, if you're going to oppose Justice Gonzalez at the first election, and that's the way it was.
Well, it's interesting because I am told that that's still how party politics work, and that if you're not in with the party, if you haven't done enough to help the political party, then you're not as deserving. So you're interesting because somehow in your background, you are the person that they were looking for. You seem nonpartisan because you were appointed by a Republican and a Democratic governor. I'm not sure that that is something that would happen today, that we would have people appointed from different parties, because if you don't even do enough for your own party, it would be hard to think that the other party would want you. Do you think that that should be happening more, that we should be more bipartisan?
Well, like I said earlier, there's no way to remove politics completely out of any process. But yes, I hope that our society will not be as polarized as it is now, because I agree with you, that would not happen in today's environment. And I'm just happy that I lived through the process and enjoyed it.
Well, and then while you were on the Supreme Court, you were known for being quite a dissenter. And today, when we hear about dissenting, we think of fighting. There's fighting in all of the parties and all of the levels of government everywhere that we look. So how were you able to dissent but still be collegial with all of your colleagues?
Well, it depends on the individuals. You know, I had the benefit of, when I came to the court, of serving with some outstanding, ethical, competent jurists. But we had a mix of justices who had been in the legislature and either the House or the Senate, and their worldview was different than mine. I had never been in that body. I didn't come up through the legislature or the Senate or through the party ranks. So my plea was, in some areas of the law, the only area of the law that we can develop on the Texas Supreme Court is development of the common law. But in other areas of the law, my plea to my colleagues, with all due respect, that's not our role. These public policy issues that you failed to pass in the legislature, you're now trying to do it through fiat, through the court, and that's not our role. So I dissented. Whether they, in the beginning, they said, who in the world is this this upstart coming in and telling us to stay in our lane. But we were collegial. We got along. There was no rancor from my part, and hopefully there was no rancor in their part either. I was an odd duck, and I stayed an odd duck. But that changed as the Supreme Court evolved to what it is now, where every single member of the Texas Supreme Court in 2023 is a Republican. When I came to the court in 1984, every single member of the court were Democrats. And some their history had been as policymakers in the legislature. I took positions in dissenting opinions, and I'm so pleased that later on, the positions that I advocated became majority opinions as the personnel in the court changed.
As long as you stay on the course, and I'm sure that you know this because of your faith, you're not who has to change when you're right. Sometimes it's the makeup that has to change.
Well, that's beyond my pay grade, and I didn't see it that way. But I agree with you that if the personnel changes, we all are the products of our history and our experiences. That doesn't make us bad people. That's just who we are. Mm-hmm. Some of us are open to change. I evolved a lot during my 20 years as a judge. I wish if I had to do it over again, I'd be a better judge than I was as a greenhorn judge, as a district judge in criminal cases. The sentences that I meted out were harsh, and they would not be as harsh as they are back then, as I was back then, simply because I'm a different person. Mm-hmm. I'm wiser, more measured. It's just like, remember when you were a freshman in high school, you thought you knew everything? Well, I did. That's the way when you are a baby judge. You think you know everything. But as time goes on, if you're open to change, we find out how little we know. And not everything is black and white. But I saw things in black and white as a baby judge. But as a more seasoned, experienced judge, I see the complexities and the nuances. They're not black and white at all. The close calls, there's under our system, somebody wins, somebody loses. And it takes 5 votes in the Supreme Court to make one party prevail versus the others. So it is a process, and I think by and large, we get it right. In one speech that I was given to the bar, I perhaps in advice I said, you know what? The Texas Supreme Court is a court of last error. I see that said that facetiously, but there's some truth to that. They don't make errors, intentional errors, or we didn't make intentional errors, but it can be viewed as the court of last error because usually there is, unless you're dealing with a federal question, our opinion is law for the state of Texas, and there is no further appellate review unless you're dealing with a federal question.
Because you've evolved in your mindset, is that why you enjoy being an arbitrator today?
I've been an arbitrator, and I've been a mediator. I no longer do mediations. I am more at ease at listening to the parties, trying to be an attentive listener, and make a ruling based on the law as I understand it, and make an award. So I enjoy being an arbitrator more so than a mediator. Mediators have no power. Mm-hmm. Mediators are cheerleaders, and cheerleaders and in the sense that they are trying to get the other side, to see the other side, and work toward a compromise that they can both sides can live with, and that's very difficult.
Mm-hmm. So I want to go back to you being the first Hispanic on the Supreme Court and the first Hispanic person to ever hold a statewide office in Texas. When we look today, there still aren't a lot of minorities represented in those positions. Is that something that we should try to change? And if so, how could we do that?
Well, for starters, I think we need to do away with partisan election for judges. For starters, I don't think that the party label should be the determining factor whether you're going to vote for the person or not. And it's very difficult to campaign and differentiate yourself from the other candidates who are also seeking the position. By and large, the people that the voters that vote up to this point have very little information to make a educated view of the person they're going to vote for, because the canons of ethics, as they should, prohibit us from asking people to vote for me as a judge, and I will rule in your favor, regardless of what the law is. Mm-hmm. That's not the way the system works. And as a result of having partisan election for judges, we've had some excellent Democrats that have been voted out of office because of the swing that one party prevails. And we've had some excellent Republican judges that have also been swept out. So we've lost a lot, and we're not perhaps getting the best that we deserve and can get because we do have partisan election for judges. And that's a modest first step.
And I think that when the legislature got away and eliminated the straight ticket voting, I think it was the attempt to try to stop that so that you would have to know who are you actually voting for. But I don't know that anybody really does that.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. It was a good first step. Mm-hmm. But it didn't go far enough. Mm-hmm. I was flabbergasted. The Democrats control the governorship, the House, and the Senate, and they didn't move to reform the system and getting away from partisan election for judges. Then it came full circle. Now the Republicans were in power, and the Republicans had the governorship, the House, and the Senate. And change was not an option. Well, it was an option, but an option they didn't exercise because they said, wait a minute, we just got here. We got to get some of our people in. So self-interest carried the day, both for the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and it's very, very difficult. In recognizing the fact that the so-called Missouri plan, where you get a committee to vet the candidates for minimum standards of competency and ethics, and they recommend 3 candidates to the governor, and the governor can pick one of the 3. It's in my way of thinking, it's an improvement, but there is no way to remove politics all of it. I serve as a vice chairman of the Federal Judicial Evaluation Committee. And we try very, very hard to vet the candidates based on competence and integrity and ethics, and let others decide. And one of the criteria for our committee, put politics aside. That's not a consideration, whether the person's a Democrat or Republican. But by and large, when you have a Democratic governor, Democratic president, Democratic Senate, they're going to favor people they're familiar with in terms of once all things being equal. And that's understandable. And I was surprised that sometimes there's a little horse trading. You know, somebody from one state can say, I want this person to be appointed to the federal judiciary. Another party from another state say, well, I'm not too keen on that candidate, but if you vote for my candidate that I want in a different state for federal judiciary, you know, they trade votes. It happens occasionally. But life, we're all flawed. We're all sinners. So we do the best we can with what we have.
In your perfect world, would judges be appointed, or would they just not have a party affiliation and there's still a vote of all the people?
Well, at a minimum, they would not have any party affiliation. They're just a candidate. But I do not want to rob the voters of the opportunity to vote them out. Mm-hmm. So you can be appointed, confirmed by the Senate. At the next election, let the voters, and by and large, they're going to win. But if a person is guilty of unethical practice or shady practice or malfeasance, and there's a cloud that the person is not acting as a justice or a judge in the proper manner, you know, let the voters have a crack at it, voting them out.
Well, and it's interesting just watching from sort of the perspective of the Bar Association. I think sometimes candidates for judicial offices forget that everybody votes. There's a lot of, you know, come to the Bar Association, come to all of the sister organizations and get endorsements. And that's not the majority of who's voting. They're regular people out in the community that need to be catered to and that need to understand why you would be the best judge.
Well, it is, but it's very difficult to get any interests because we all sound the same. These are my credentials. This is my body of my work that I've done. And if you believe that I'm worthy of your vote, vote for me. If not, vote for the other side, with the other candidate that is also seeking the position. You know, there is no perfect system. There's no perfect system, and that, in my view, that has been designed. So we do the best we can with what we got.
Well, since we got some free time, you should create one and then we'll sell it. So you come up with it, and then we'll bring you back and you can tell us how could we do this in the most preferred way.
I'm not that wise.
We got time. I'll get you a committee. We got time. What organizations have meant the most to you professionally or personally?
The Boy Scouts have been an integral part of my life. I didn't make it to Eagle Scout, but I was in the process. But to see men willing to give of their time to mold, shape an individual to do the right thing, to be honorable in their public service. You know, all this is pro bono work. They just have an interest in making this a better world, a better society, a better city. I am very thankful for the Scoutmasters that I've had. I am very thankful for my relationships in the Bar Association. You know, I was telling the videographer that I saw Terry Tottenham's name, and a person that I respect immensely because of his work and his ethics and his skills. And there are countless people like that. And I like the bar. The Bar Association, the Bar Journal is featuring young Hispanics coming up through the ranks that are exemplary, doing good work in their firms and good work in the bar. And it's so gratifying to see. And I hope that someday they too can have a position that they aspire to in the judiciary or otherwise.
Well, that leads us to our last question. What advice would you give to lawyers who want to follow in your footsteps?
Well, do the right thing, prepare yourself, be respectful. We're all flawed, but to the extent that you can, be open to becoming a better listener. to being less judgmental, and to be the person that you want to be and lead by example.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. I hope that people take away that they need to be open to the opportunities. You don't need to go and shake down the opportunities. Just be open to something to happen for you, just like you did.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll see y'all next time.